Hello, YouTube family. I want to talk about something one of the stupidest things I ever done in my life. 16 years old. Jumped in my car one evening, drunk. I was drunk. And I drove. Big mistake. Let me tell you what happened. I had this friend. It was a girl. Well, she was 20 years old. And put it bluntly, I had the hots for her. And every Saturday night, which this is when I lived in the boarding house with my dad. And the living room was off limits to everybody in the boarding house except me. And I'd be sitting in there at the living room watching TV with this girl. Her name was Gail. And one Saturday night, she left the living room, went to her bedroom, and when she come back in, when she come back in, she was in her panties and bra. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know how I was, but inexperienced me, I excused myself and I run to my room and got me a shot of Daddy's liquor. He had moonshine in a big gallon jar, and I got me a little shot of that. I don't know why I did that. And I went back in the room and she started cuddling up, and everything. And all of a sudden it hit me, I think she wanted sex. And then I run to the red room and I got me another little shot of that moonshine. And pretty soon I was drunk. And when she realized I was hitting Daddy's liquor, she got really mad at me. And she run out of there and put some clothes back on and come back in there and told me to go to my room. She was mad. So I blew it. So all of a sudden, it went from about to get me some nookie to not getting no nookie. And I got really, really pissed off, and I was drunk then. I got mad, madder than hell. And I took out the door to go to my car, and she tried to take my keys, but I got away from her. And I jumped in that car and drove that, spun out of that driveway, spinning wheels, hit the road, and straight into town I went. And I seen there was a stoplight up there. It was in town. So I started slowing down. And it wasn't slowing down. And I swear it felt like I was standing on that brake to stop. But it stopped all right after I rear-ended the car that was at the red light. But the bigger problem was the car was a police car with a policeman in it. And I bumped him right hard, no damage. And he turned on his lights, you know, the flashing light, which at that time it was a red light. And he come out there and walked up to my car, and my window was down. And he started asking me, "What the hell is wrong with you? Didn't you see me?" And I I thought I was going to jail. And he started talking to me a minute, and he made a mistake, I think. He should have took me to jail. But he's talking to me, and after all that happened, it scared the drunk right out of me. I wasn't, I was sober. And he talked to me about 15 to 20 minutes. And he says, "I want you to turn this thing around and go back home. I think you're all right. I'm doing you a favor." He was just talking to me like a father or something. But I turned that car around, and I eased on back up the street there. I lived about 10 blocks away, and pulled in that driveway and went in the boarding house. I tried to get Gail to come out and talk to me, but she wouldn't, so I went on to bed. And the next day, she was packing her lunch. She was going to work. She worked at R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. And I went in the kitchen and I started talking to her, and I was apologizing and all that stuff, and she said, "Let me tell you something. I got a story to tell you." She said, "Where the hell did she get that story from? I don't know." But she was telling me about a cat that was walking across some railroad tracks. And she said a train come along and run over part of the cat's tail. The cat lost a piece of that tail. And he turned around to look to see what happened to his tail. And there's another set of railroad tracks, a train come along and cut off his head. She said, the moral of this story is, don't lose your head over a piece of lost tail. Because I had told her about running into the cop and everything. that, that made me feel so ignorant. Did she come off with that story off just the top of her head, or had she heard it somewhere before? But 2 or 3 months after that, we were still friends and everything. And 2 or 3 months after that, she did the same thing. She come in the living room, and nobody was in that living room, me and her. She come in the living room in her panties and bra. Well, I didn't run and get a drink of my daddy's liquor then. And this was the girl. By that time I was 17 and she was 21. And she wound up getting pregnant. And she wasn't going to have the baby. She was going to have an abortion. I liked a lot of girls, but I didn't love them. So Gail was my first love. My first love. I wish she was living today where I could ask her about that story about the cat. Where did that come from? She must have heard. I don't think that come off the top of her. She must have heard that somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, that's my story today, and I'm sticking to it. I'll see you in the next one. See ya. GoPro, stop recording. Well, I was upset about that. I wanted to her to keep the child. I wanted me and her to get married and everything, but it wasn't in the cards. And she told me something. I said, we can raise the baby, we know, and all that. And she said something to me, and I mean, it hurt me to the quick. She said, she called me Mackie. And she said, Mackie, for crying out loud, you're just a boy. Can you imagine how that made me feel? But I did learn something out of that deal. Don't ever get in your car and start driving when you had a drink. And that's held true with me all these years. You couldn't get, if I had one beer, I wouldn't get in the car and drive. Because I see how easy it is for a drunk person to make mistakes driving. And I got no patience for anybody that drives drunk. But yeah, she said, Mackie, you're just a boy. So that's when I left town and went to Jacksonville, Florida, and stayed with my mama. And when I was in the Army, I had a weekend pass, and I was in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Fayetteville, not far from Winston-Salem where she lived. And I went to see her, and she told me that she had the baby, but it died, which I don't believe. I'm pretty sure she had an abortion, and a friend of mine that lived right across the street from her, we lived at 728 North Cherry Street, and my friend lived at 729 North Cherry Street. And I went over there, and he said she had an abortion. She didn't have that baby. So, also I learned that I loved her, but she didn't love me. She liked me. She liked me good enough to have sex with me. But she didn't like me good enough that she loved me. I loved her. Man, I loved her. And and one night before me and her really got intimate and everything, an ex-boyfriend of hers come by, and she wanted to leave, and he kept trying to talk her to go with him. And then he grabbed her and tried to pull her in the car. Well, I wasn't going to have that. And I had a little pointed beer can opener. And I come over and I raked it across his chest. And I guess I cut him a little bit. And that got his attention, and he let her go. And he said, "What the hell do you want?" And I grabbed Gail by the hand, and I said, "Well, I got what I want, and you need to leave here. I'll open you up." And this was a guy, he was bigger than me, and he was in his 20s. But I had him buffaloed. He left. And then Gail, she asked me, "Why did you do that? You could have got in trouble." I said, "Well, I won't let him make you do something you didn't want to do." And I think then she realized how much I cared about her. And it's a good idea she wasn't wanting to get married when she got pregnant and everything, because it would have never worked. Because the way I felt about her, she didn't feel about me. But when she told me, she said, "Mackie, you're just a boy." The way I look at it, well, now, this day and time, if a 21-year-old is messing with a 16-year-old boy, that could put her in jail for that. I don't know if they could put her in jail back then for that or not. But I sure cared about her. And she's died. She's dead now. If she were living, she'd probably be about 87 or 88, something like that. But she worked at R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company making cigarettes. And she always would grab a handful of cigarettes. It wasn't in the pack yet, but it was made and it was in this tray, and she'd grab a handful of that and put it in her purse and bring it, and she smoked too, and bring me these Winston cigarettes. I sure like that woman. Sure did. I guess you could say that was the first woman that I actually